All right, welcome into the show. It's called The Sweat, a DraftKings program, 60 minutes of excellent fantasy and sports betting insight. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Let's welcome in our NFL panel since Week 12 wraps up this evening in Los Angeles. Ravens at the Rams. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler are here for Chase or Fade to break down this matchup. Hey, Reed, the Ravens are favored by 3.5 points. Which team would you choose here to cover?
I actually like the Rams to cover in this one. I think, look, all the public money and a lot of the sentiment is going to be on the Ravens. They're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL right now with the best quarterback. But the Rams, even though Jared Goff and this team hasn't really played up to par in what they were last season, they still come back home. And the Ravens, if you look at Lamar Jackson and the two games that we saw that were a little suspect with him against Pittsburgh, or a Pittsburgh team that, again, didn't look very good yesterday, that took the Ravens to overtime. And then the Cleveland game, both teams support a very strong defensive line. And that's the strength of the Rams defense. It's probably the strength of their entire team right now. I think it's going to be close. I even like the money line if you can get it at plus 160, plus 170, if you're feeling, a little juicy. Jeff, who are you chasing to cover?
I'm not feeling juicy enough to take the money line, but I do agree with Reed. I really like the Rams plus 3.5 here. It just feels like the Rams are getting a little bit underbought here. I mean, this is still a very good team. They haven't allowed more than 20 points in each of their last 4 games defensively. The other thing the Rams do really good, they're good against rushing quarterbacks. They've allowed the least amount of yards to quarterbacks in the run game this season. Now, I know that might not mean much because they probably haven't faced anywhere near the athleticism of Lamar Jackson, but it still means something. They have a very athletic, obviously, D-line with Aaron Donald up there leading them. I just feel like the Rams are going to be able to do it. They got Todd Gurley going a little bit last week. I think that the Baltimore run defense is still something that you can take advantage of in the right situation. I think it's going to be kind of just a ground and pound game, kind of like you saw last week with the Rams and the Bears. Obviously, the Ravens are going to be a little bit more able on offense, but I really feel like the Rams are going to be able to keep this close and maybe even win outright.
All right, so we transition. DraftKings Sportsbook has the point total at 47.5. And interestingly enough, you'd think now the reason why there might be points in this game is because of Baltimore, not L.A. If you had said that at the beginning of the year, I don't know how many people would agree. So chase or fade the over, Jeff?
Yeah, I definitely would not chase the over here. Again, I kind of mentioned what kind of game I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be kind of similar to the Rams' last game, albeit with a little bit more scoring. I mean, Baltimore's obviously a much more competent offense than Chicago, but I mentioned the Rams' defense over the last 4 or 5 games since getting blown out, or since giving up like 55 points to Tampa and then 30 the next week to Seattle. They really have not been scored on much at all. Even good teams like San Francisco couldn't get more than 20 points here. So, I mean, you're asking the Ravens now to just break that streak, and the Rams themselves, like I said, they got Todd Gurley going last week. I really feel like they're going to try and run the ball a lot here. Shelter Jared Goff in that O-line a little bit, which has been improving a little bit too. I really feel like a 23-20 game is in the cards here, and I feel like 47 is just too much.
Reed, do you disagree? Chase or fade? This one's hitting the over.
No, I agree with Jeff. If you just look at just the narrative, right, and the prognostication that we think that this is going to be a close game, the Rams defense has to step up, and they're 4th in adjusted line yards and 11th in adjusted sack rate. And so this defensive line, again, is playing really good against these stronger quarterbacks. And we've seen it. We've seen these teams come in with a lot of gusto. And look, the Ravens have been beating up on teams. Their margin of victory over the last few games, the last few weeks, has been like close to 2 touchdowns. But the Rams getting back at home, getting a couple wins, getting Todd Gurley going. If you just look at how this game's, and the Rams are 5-1, hitting the under in their last 6 home games. And so now when you look at having to really change this offense and really change the dynamic of how this team attacks games, Sean McVay is probably one of the more open coaches, and he said to himself, look, like, we have to do something differently. We have to change how we approach these games. We can't necessarily just throw and hope to score 30 points because that's not the team that's out there right now. So I'm with Jeff here in the under.
Let's check out the showdown slate now on DraftKings. Lamar Jackson is making his Monday Night Football debut. He will cost you $20,400 if you make him your captain for tonight's showdown contest. Are you chasing or fading Jackson as your captain, Reed?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to fade Jackson, even at this price. And it's kind of the same dynamic Christian McCaffrey. When you have a guy who has such a safe floor, a high floor, if you look at these quarterbacks, even to an extent like Jeff Driscoll, who's very different than Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, The guys that use their legs and have the proclivity to run and really produce with their legs, even in the bad games where Lamar Jackson lost to Cleveland and then took that Pittsburgh team in overtime, he threw 5 picks, he still had a solid floor running. So at 24, I mean, it's not a bad look. It's very expensive, but if you wanted to pivot off of that, taking Jared Goff, who's been atrocious this season as opposed to last, getting that home dog, getting that quarterback in that home team, potentially getting Brandon Cooks back and having having Todd Gurley produce a lot better, maybe opens up the pocket a little bit for a guy like Jared Goff. He's almost $8,000 cheap, like close to $8,000 cheaper in that captain spot. So if you wanted to do that and pivot off and then spend elsewhere, then I would do that. But it's going to be tough to fade Lamar Jackson.
Jackson as your captain. Jeff, chase or fade?
I mean, I'm not necessarily fading Lamar Jackson. I really feel like there's a very short list of players you should be considering for captain tonight, and Lamar Jackson is definitely one of them. At the same time, I like Todd Gurley better in this spot. I mean, this is the player we really saw get going last week against the Bears defense. It was still pretty good, even with Akeem Hicks out. I mean, he just missed the 100-yard bonus, scored, probably had his best game of the year, and maybe his highest volume game of the year as well. I like taking the discount there because I like the Rams. I like the Rams to cover. I think they're going to be able to run. So I'll take the discount. I'll still fit Lamar Jackson in my lineup. But like I said, there's not many players you should be considering for captain. So if you do like Lamar Jackson, it's fine. Put him up there. Gurley is really the only other player I'm considering. I think Cooper Kupp you could probably think about too. Field might open up for him. But really, with Baltimore having such limited pass catchers, it's kind of L-Jacks or nothing on that side. So not necessarily fading 100%, but I like Gurley better.
In case you didn't know, Brandon Cooks is returning to the Rams after recovering from his 5th known concussion of his playing career, the 2nd this season. First action for Cooks since Week 8. Chase or fade, play Brandon Cooks at 6,600 as a flex. Jeff?
I think it's an interesting flex. I mean, you're going to have to make some decisions tonight, obviously. And it kind of comes down to how the Ravens are going to cover. I mean, if Jimmy Smith is on him or not. But I think Brandon Cooks, you just have to look back. It's kind of a history play, right? I mean, he's got 600-yard games with the Rams going back to last year. In a showdown slate with such limited receiving options on the Baltimore side, if he gets 90, 100 yards, he's probably going to outproduce all the other options for Baltimore. So you don't even really necessarily need him to get in the end zone here, a deep ball or two, and he might be putting up enough yards for a big score. So 6,600, it's really cheap. I think I would take a shot here with him as well. Obviously, you can still pay up for Cooper Kupp and fit both of them in. This is part of the reason why I like Todd Gurley, because then you can fit all these guys in along with Lamar Jackson. But as far as Cooks goes, he's definitely in play tonight. That history with the Rams, just his ability to put up the yards, it's going to produce. If he gets there, he's going to outproduce basically every Baltimore receiver.
Reed, you with Jeff on this one?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at showdown, you have to take these chances where these guys can get chunk yards. And Robert Woods, a little banged up, not necessarily playing up to how he's been playing over the last couple of seasons with the Rams. And so when Brandon Cooks coming back, that injury, a lot of people might think, well, he might not be 100%. He's going to be playing. I absolutely agree. I mean, 6,600 is not a ton. That's kind of the reason why I like Jared Goff. Even though the secondary with Marcus Peters is good, has been a lot better with Jimmy Smith in the lineup, I still think getting a piece of the pie of all of these receivers, not necessarily choosing one, because Cooper Kupp over the last 2 weeks has not been the Cooper Kupp that we've seen. It all fringes to what Jeff was saying. It all hinges on Todd Gurley. We saw Jared Goff really start to decline when Todd Gurley wasn't producing. When that run game is producing, the play action is there. Jared Goff is that player. When you look at Brandon Cooks, he's that long play guy. He's that 40. Even if he gets pass interference, that's a 40 or 50-yard gain for the offense. Potentially, if the offense isn't going, they're still going to potentially use him. So if he catches 1 or 2 of those, he's in the money there.
Yeah, it's awfully cheap. Let's go to a value play. Speaking of some value, perhaps, who would you suggest as a value play that you would chase, Reed?
Gus Edwards. We've seen this guy now have 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. If you look at Baltimore on the road, they're averaging close to 4 or 5 red zone attempts on the road. It's the highest in the NFL. Gus Edwards, and we've now seen Mark Ingram's usage and production decrease along with Lamar Jackson clearly cannibalizing his production, but also Gus Edwards being a part of this backfield. They want to keep Mark Ingram healthy for the playoffs. Gus Edwards is that guy. We saw it last season. He's gained over 100 yards last week, and if he falls into the end zone at his price tag at $1,200, that's value right there.
Jeff, a value play that you might want to chase, or even someone you want to fade?
Oh yeah, I mean you gotta at least consider some of these cheaper Baltimore receivers, obviously, and I'm talking like under 5K. The receivers, I don't think I'd bother paying up for Mark Andrews. Although I mean, if you're making multiple builds, obviously you're gonna want to get some exposure to Mark Andrews in case he finds the end zone again, posts like 100 yards. He's got that in his range of outcomes, but I like the cheaper ones. I like going cheap. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens just don't put up a ton of yards to the air, so you might as well just go with the cheap options. And you have guys down there like Nick Boyle, and Hayden Hurst, the multitude of tight ends. We could definitely consider. I like going to Willie Snead. If I feel like the Rams are going to keep this close, it could be in a situation where the Ravens are actually passing a little bit late. Willie Snead should get the non-Jalen Ramsey coverage, which is good. Could be a situation where he just sees a few more passing targets than normal, possibly even finds the end zone again. So I like going to Willie Snead as a value option. All of these guys are kind of risky though for the Ravens. They just don't see a high bunch of targets. It's really random who gets the targets every week, and they all kind of play about 50% of the snaps. So I think Snead, though, for me, has the highest upside, and that's what you want to chase with Joe now.
Jeff and Reed are back later on to weigh in on the Thanksgiving Day games, both the sportsbook lines as well as DFS picks. We move on to the NBA after we find out who Adam Levitan missed on in Week 12. All right, Week 12 Sunday is in the books, means it's time to find out who Levitan missed on. I'm Brendan Glasheen, and this is Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan, segment we do every Monday during the football season. With Levy, we recap his not-so-great plays from the NFL Sunday main slate. Essentially, he learns his lessons, and he learned another one about Matt Ryan. He was bad against the Bucs, just 9.64 DK fantasy points, his second lowest output of the season. Hey, matchup was there. What happened?
Good question. I mean, it's so bad to miss at quarterback because it's the most projectable position, and it's so bad to miss when you spend up at quarterback. I just did not think there was any way for Matt Ryan to fail to not get at least 300 yards and a touchdown against the Bucs at home with Julio Jones, with Calvin Ridley, with all these weapons against the inept Bucs corners. So what happened? I think this was a bottom 5% outcome for Matt Ryan, and if they played it 100 times, I'd be high on Matt Ryan again. But yeah, it's just unexplainable, I think.
Same game, Tampa wideout Chris Godwin. You were not on him. Once again, a stud, 7 receptions for 184 yards and 2 scores on 8 targets. Last week, you missed on Mike Evans. You decided to ignore the Bucs wideouts entirely for this slate. The salary here for Godwin has risen steadily throughout the year. Has he entered that must-play discussion now?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say one thing for tournaments, though, is that every single week almost it's been a Bucs receiver that's been involved in what you needed to win tournaments. And so I think I and other people get paralyzed. I don't know who to play. I don't know who to play, Evans or Godwin. I don't know which one of them to play. And I don't know if there's a good answer going into each week who to play. I think if you're playing multiple lineups, having some exposure to both, because one of them on every given week, it seems, has one of the highest ceilings. So just the way that they play and the way that the Bucs are using these two guys, it's hard for one of them not to go off.
All right, let's do one more. You liked Miles Sanders against the Seahawks front. There was some promise considering he had 15 total touches in this game. That matched his highest mark of his rookie season, but couldn't break through that Seattle line.
Yeah, and I mean, Miles Sanders' usage has been great the last 2 weeks. He's been playing almost 90% of the snaps and handling a huge portion of the running back touches. The problem is this Eagles offense is cratering, and I saw that coming in with all their offensive line issues and all their wide receiver issues and the quarterback play, and it's just been really, really bad on their offense. So I don't know if it's Miles Sanders' fault. I thought about coming off of him just because I thought the Eagles could really struggle on offense here, couldn't pull the trigger on it. It just goes to show you that no matter what kind of usage you get, if the offense is completely inept, you're going to struggle.
That is who Adam Levitan missed on in Week 12. Find his coverage on DK Live, the DK Playbook, and Twitter, Adam Levitan. We'll catch you next Monday, Levy, to see who you missed on in Week 13. You're cleanly shaved for the holiday. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Okay, happy Thanksgiving.
Well, I should have known better. I forgot Levitan is not a big fan of Thanksgiving, but we'll see if these guys are. 11 games in the association this evening. We'll discuss them with Ryan Mogjosh, host of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life, Ben Heisler, fantasy insider for 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. They have stopped by for NBA high or low. I asked these guys if the spreads and totals are too high or too low? We'll begin just as we did in the NFL. A team out of LA, the Lakers, have won 7 straight games. They're actually on the road, 5-point favorites over the Spurs. San Antonio finally stopped the bleeding last time out, ending an 8-game losing streak with a win at the Knicks, for what that's worth. Hey, is that 5-point spread tonight too low, Ryan?
Yeah, it is too low. You nailed it. They just stopped the bleeding from an 8-game losing streak. And on the other end of the spectrum, the Lakers are balling. They're playing really well. I honestly don't know why it's 5. I'm betting my kids' future college tuition on this game, the over. I don't know if Vegas thinks that they're going to go into the Riverwalk and all get wasted the night before their game and not be ready to play. I don't know what the deal is there. But I'm going, yes, it's too low.
That's a heck of a way to put it. Ben, how about yourself? How do you feel about the 5-point spread? Too high, too low?
Yeah. So what Ryan said is 100% true. I cannot argue with any form of it, but it also feels like a trap, right? The Spurs are 6-11 on the year. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. The road team coming in has more wins in their winning streak than the team that is actually playing at home this year. But I do think it might actually be the right line. Here's why. Lakers, despite winning 7 straight, are actually 1-5 in their last 6 games against the spread. We've seen this line actually move in some places from 5 to 4.5, despite the public being all over Los Angeles. So you know that there's some sharp money coming in. This to me is a fade the public game, and I think it's the right line, even though Ryan is 100% right. Can we have both things be right in this scenario?
That's fine. It seems you two have worked it out. You're both smiling at each other on the screen, so that will make people really fans of both of you. Look, a low-scoring affair is expected in the Kings-Celtics game. We found out Kemba Walker has been ruled out for Boston. As for the Kings, Trevor Ariza is out, but Bogdan Bogdanovic is probable. DK Sportsbook has the total at just 205.5. That figure too high or too low for this game, Ben?
It's a tad bit too low for me, and 205.5 is really, really low. And what's interesting is that this game has actually been bet down all the way from 209.5 down to that number. No Kemba Walker for Boston. That's going to hurt. They're going to be without Daniel Theis as well, which hurts less, I suppose. But the Celtics still play with a decent level of pace. They're 18th in the NBA this year. Kings are bottom 4 in pace, but they still have some streaky shooters. You mentioned Bogdanovic likely to play. I think their defense is going to be shaky on the second night of a back-to-back. So ultimately, it's a good line. It's not a fun line to necessarily bet on, but we'll do so anyway. So I think everybody's might be overreacting to Kemba Walker being out, which ultimately drove the line down. So it's a tad bit too low.
Yeah, Ryan, are you with Ben here? Is the Walker absence being magnified too much?
I am with Ben here. I think it's slightly too low as well. 205 is low. Yes, Kemba's, well, I wrote down here doubtful, but you just broke the news. He's probably not going to play today. The Celtics in the 2 of the last 3 games have scored under 100 points, which is also kind of weird. And what's the weirdest thing is, if you guys can remember last year, the Kings were known for playing at a super fast pace, and this year they're like 27th in pace. Just all weird things here. But again, 205 is almost too low for me. I find it hard to believe that these 2 combined teams are not going to score that. So I'm going to go slightly low.
Okay, and just to clarify, too, Daniel Theis is out for Boston as well, so we'll see how they fill that void. No starters announced yet for Brad Stevens. Let's go to the biggest favorites of the night. That would be the Miami Heat, 11-point edge over the Hornets, who are losers in 4 straight games. Worth noting as well, Justice Winslow remains out for Miami, so spread too low or too high here, Ryan?
I think it's too low. The Heat got handled by the Sixers. I think it was Saturday night. Did not look good at all. Jimmy Butler was a minus 31. They shot terribly. And they're going to look at this game as a bounce-back game, even though Charlotte did lose a heartbreaker to the Bulls last game when Levine went off. I think the Heat want to get back on track and keep that status known as a top team in the East and beat a team that they should handle.
And how about you, Ben? Too high, too low?
Yeah, I'm with Ryan. I think it's too low. It's a fair number with how good Miami has been against the spread this year. I'm probably sticking with it. Miami 4-1 against the spread in their last 5-1 straight up. And let's talk about Charlotte for a second. That is about as crushing of a defeat as I've seen in quite some time, being up 5 to the Bulls. Thomas Satoransky hits a 3 with about 5 seconds left. Then all of a sudden, Ryan Arcidiacono, who was playing in crunch time
for your Chicago Bulls, I should say my Chicago Bulls, comes in, steals the inbounds pass, finds Zach LaVine, and he hits his 13th three-pointer of the game to give the Bulls an improbable victory. That is about as heartbreaking of a loss as you can get for Charlotte. They're still going to be reeling from this, so I think Miami wins comfortably tonight.
Well, Archie Diacono made shots like that at Villanova, so it's not that surprising. Finally, the largest point total exists in a matchup between two of the NBA's worst defensive teams, Timberwolves at the Hawks. Is this number too high or too low? 3.5, that is. The number is 3.5.
Oh, I wrote down notes about the total. If we're looking at
235. My bad. There it is. Yeah, 235. Ben, go ahead.
Okay, let's get weird. Let's take the over on a 235 slate. And you're right. You mentioned it too, Brendan, that neither of these teams play a lick of defense. And normally we think about Atlanta as that high-flying, up-pace, up-tempo team, but really it's Minnesota that's top 3 in pace this year in the NBA. I know that a lot of the projections might have this number a little bit lower as far as total points in this game, but both of these teams need to improve on their three-point shooting. Both of them are right around 31% this year, and yet you still are projecting totals in the mid 230s. So I think that total is going to clear 235, 236, wherever you have it is a lot of points. But I do think both of these teams have the ability, with their consistent on offense and their inability to play defense, that they can get there tonight.
Over, or rather too high or too low? 235. Ryan.
I'm down to get weird too. I think it's too low. I'm going over. I love Trey going against the T-Wolves when they don't have a guard that wants to guard anybody. And then I love Cat against the bigs for Atlanta. Alex Len's going to guard Cat. I just love the pace of these games, and I love the matchups. I'm going over.
All right, those are the betting angles in the NBA. Ryan and Josh return later on for Price Check to break down the 11-game hoop slate on DraftKings. Going to shift to college hoops once Adam Kaufman eloquently ties a bow on DK's King of the Beach down in Miami.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 2019 King of the Beach Live Final.
A little bit nervous. I ain't gonna lie. A little bit nervous right now.
I'm feeling awesome. I just need Derrick Henry to continue with the momentum. Keep pushing. Keep pressing.
Feeling pretty good. 25 up on the next lineup. Kind of sweating some Edelman and a few other players. Nothing we can do right now, but just watch the games and hope for the best, right?
A few pick sixes and a couple more hairy touchdowns. I'm doing it.
Heck of a sweat, everyone. This one really came down to the wire, but now it's finally over.
The winner of King of the Beach 2019, Tyrannosaurus Flex. We chatted earlier, you said your wife doesn't like talking about DFS. How about now?
I mean, she's happy with the outcome, I'm sure. I was feeling really good for a while, and then Derrick Henry scored 20 points in 30 seconds. It was a sweat pretty much right up until the very end. But we held on. Thankful to be in the position I'm in.
What are you going to do with the 200K?
Play some more DFS, probably.
What's going on? I'm Carolyn Azak here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. It's been a tough couple of weeks for Steelers QB Mason Rudolph. Last week he took a helmet to his head courtesy of Myles Garrett, and Sunday he took a seat on the bench. Rudolph was replaced by Devlin Hodges for his ineffectiveness during Sunday's game against the winless Bengals. Rudolph completed just 8 for 16 passes for 85 yards and an interception while the Steelers trailed 7-3. Mike Tomlin decided his team needed a spark, and the man they called Duck gave them just that. Hodges threw for 118 yards and a touchdown to lead Pittsburgh to a narrow victory. It appears Duck did enough to earn himself the starting job. NFL Network is reporting that the Steelers are headed in the direction of a quarterback change. So Rudolph will likely be looking on from the sidelines when his team tries to get revenge this week against the Browns.
There are games going on in college basketball as we speak, so very appreciative of Rob Snyder's time. Rob's the bracket guru over at NBC Sports Boston. Hey, I'll tell you what, I know March is the best time of year for college hoops, but these early season tournaments, I think they're the best.
Yeah, they really are. We've gotten some great games early on. Great games.
No doubt. All right, this is college basketball pick and roll. Which side of these DK Sportsbook bets do you like, Rob, for tonight? We're going to start with number 17, Tennessee, hosting Chattanooga. DK Sportsbook favors the 4-0 Vols by 21 points. Chattanooga fell by 36 to Florida State last time out, so who are you picking to cover?
Yeah, fun fact about that Chattanooga Florida State game. I was on here telling you to take Chattanooga plus 20 in that one. So take everything I say with a grain of salt about the mocks. But I do like Tennessee covering this big spread. They're the 16th best offense in the country. A lot of people thought that they would take a step back this year. They really haven't so far. Chattanooga's really bad. I thought they would be okay to cover last time against Florida State. They were not. Tennessee's been a really, really good first half team this year, which is what you want when you're trying to cover a big spread. You want that nice lead early. They've covered in 3 straight games, so I like the Volunteers in this one.
All right, let's stay in the SEC, Rob. Arkansas takes their undefeated record, 5-0, on the road to Atlanta. Razorbacks go up against Georgia Tech. Sportsbook has this one's total at 136, and both teams have actually scored at least 64 points in each of their games so far. So you taking the over or the under?
Yeah, I'm going to shock you here. I'm actually going to take the under, and they're both pretty fast-paced teams, which would say, hey, take the over, but this feels a little bit like a trap. Arkansas has actually hit the under in every game this season. They've hit the under on 4 of their last 5 road games. On the other side, Georgia Tech, they've hit the under in 7 of their 9 last home games. Neither team really shoots the ball well from outside. They like to play fast, but they don't really shoot well. Arkansas's first half defense has been really good this season, and Arkansas's first half defense has been really good. Georgia Tech's first half offense has not. So I expect kind of a really low-scoring first half, and I think it's going to take a lot for them to hit the over in the second half. We've seen a lot of high-scoring second halves this year, but Georgia Tech and Arkansas, I think they can stay under that 136.
Next up, Murray State, a 6.5-point road favorite against LaSalle. Are you picking the Racers to cover that?
I am. This is a neutral site game, and honestly, when it comes to Murray State and LaSalle, this is all gut. I just don't think LaSalle's very good, to be honest. They're shooting under 40% on the season. They're a terrible. This is big. When you have a line in that between like 4 and 8, there's a big chance for a backdoor cover. LaSalle, one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. So if this game stays in that under 10 range, you'll have a nice advantage there with LaSalle not being able to shoot free throws towards the end of the game. They turn it over 17 times per game, and Murray State has the size. They're a fairly big team for mid-major. LaSalle very small. They have 0 forwards, averaging more than 17 minutes per game. They're a very guard-heavy team against a fairly tall Murray State team, so I like Murray State here to cover.
Yeah, that one's at Hertz Arena down in Florida. Finally, Indiana is another unbeaten team, 5-0. Hoosiers are an 11-point favorite against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Who are you picking to cover?
Indiana, and I actually really like this line. Indiana's been really good this year. They have the 22nd best offense in the nation. They've covered 3 straight spreads, all over 18.5. They've just been really hot offensively this year. Louisiana Tech, they're a bad road team, 2-9 in their last 11. Indiana's defense has gotten much better. Their opponents are only shooting 37% from the field against them. I know their opponents haven't been great, but they have played really well, and Louisiana Tech is another opponent that's not that great. Indiana, once again, with a huge size advantage in this game. Louisiana Tech, they don't have anyone averaging over 10 minutes per game that's 6'7" or taller. So, and 3 of Indiana's top 6 scorers are all 6'7" or taller. So Indiana should be able to hit the boards pretty well. They should be able to score easily, and they should be able to cover 11 fairly easily.
He's Rob Snyder of NBC Sports Boston, bracketology guru. Thanks again for the time. Great stuff, and enjoy the games this week.
You got it, Brendan. Thanks, man. You too.
Okay, coming up, a preview of the 3-game Thanksgiving Day slate in the NFL. And speaking of Turkey Day, former NFL safety George Teague, he played his fair share of Thanksgiving Day games. Time to chat with the former 2-time Dallas Cowboy. DraftKings is happy to welcome George Teague, former safety. DraftKings is happy to welcome George Teague, former safety who spent 9 years in the NFL, stops with the Cowboys, Packers, and Dolphins. George has spent time with the Cowboys in 2 separate stints. The first time, 1996. The team was coming off winning their 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years. What was that environment like at the time, and was there an expectation that another Super Bowl trip was a given?
Man, it was definitely incredible because of the talent that the team had and the work ethic. And, going into that year, we really felt like we'd be another Super Bowl contender. We actually played very, very well, but we fell short, in the NFC Championship game. And, man, when you're around the guys at this level and when you can compete against very, very good football teams, man, it makes it fun, first of all, but it's definitely a challenge and a grind to get, try to go 16 weeks through the preseason and everything else. So, man, I miss those good old days. Just being able to compete for a Super Bowl, that was cool times.
Yeah, the Packers went on to win that Super Bowl that season, and the team you were on, that was the team you were on the season prior. So you couldn't have been too thrilled to see them win, or am I wrong?
And you weren't supposed to hit me that hard so fast. We were starting to build things at the Packers. I got drafted by the Green Bay Packers in the first round. And,
right.
We progressed year to year to year. And after my third season there, got traded and ended up with the Dallas Cowboys. So that was, when you say things like being you want to be at the right place at the right time. For me, I was kind of in the right place at the wrong time because I ended up missing the both Super Bowls, one with the Cowboys that I missed, and then another one that I missed with the Green Bay Packers. So that one haunts me a little bit.
You're part of one of the most memorable moments in NFL history. Back in 2000, when Terrell Owens celebrated on the Cowboys star, you ran up to him and you shoved him. What was going through your mind in that moment?
You know what? Whenever you're getting your butt handed to you a little bit, things can get a little bit frustrating, especially when guys are showboating a little bit. So to have Terrell Owens really just take over the whole football game and wanted to let us all know about it. I had a little bit of anger, I must admit, at that time. And I'm going to give it a little bit more than a shove. But, it just it was very hot on the turf. They were really giving it to us, and there was a lot of frustration around the team not being able to play as well as we wanted to. So I don't have any regrets about any of that. It is what it is. When you're competing, people are trying to do things at your house. You can't let it happen sometimes.
Have you spoke to T.O. since the incident?
No, I've actually tried to reach out to him on multiple occasions, especially years and years ago. It's a game where we know that we're all got the same accomplishments that we're trying to make: win Super Bowls, make money, have some fun, that type of stuff. But he did not want to talk to me at all on multiple occasions. So no, we have not talked.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, nowadays, you're a high school football coach in Plano, Texas, as we had spoke about before we got on here. Did you always want to be a coach, and do you hope to go to the next level at some point?
Yeah, so I had a couple of choices. I wanted to, be a coach at some level, or do some TV stuff, some broadcasting things. After I dibbled and dabbled a little bit doing internships with the Browns and the Cardinals and other teams, I really felt like that wasn't the level that I needed to be at that time. I've had the opportunity to go into college as well. But I just think the influence we can have on kids at the high school level is really where my heart and mind was and currently still is. So I've been content being at the high school level for the past 17 years.
That's excellent. Hey, I wanted a quick question just on the high school subject, because you're coaching in Texas. How about Kyler Murray this year? We're going to transition now to talk about this year NFL, but Kyler Murray, arguably the best quarterback to ever play in the state of Texas. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, yeah, and it's good because he played 10 minutes from where I'm at right now, so he's definitely a household name, and he's tremendous. Texas football is huge, but to have someone like that around here who's a dual threat guy that can run, throw, smart, has the work ethic. I mean, he's tremendous. I hate that I didn't pick him up in my draft, in my fantasy draft, because I overlooked him a little bit. But he's definitely amazing.
All right, we'll get to fantasy in a bit. Let's talk about coaching because you have that experience as a coach. Who would you say is the best coach in the NFL right now?
I know we all talk about Belichick and his ways of always finding a way to win and keeping his guys motivated. But, I tend to lean towards Sean Payton myself, just because he's done amazing things in New Orleans. His mind to be able to move that offense the way that he does, and he has a very sneaky defense. People don't realize how good their defense is. I think you have to put him in the conversation. I know when you have the Super Bowl rings that Belichick has, that maybe give him a little bit of nudge, but I'm kind of a Sean Payton fan myself.
Let's talk about this year's Dallas team, your old stomping grounds. What grade would you give Jason Garrett for this season? I know he's been all over the news, really for his overall career with the Cowboys, or you could just talk this year. Take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give him a C, maybe C+. He does a good job motivating the guys and keeping them ready, but, they're critical games. Like you said, I'm listening to the commentators, reporters and stuff here, and they're really giving them a hard time because, we really haven't won the significant game this year in particular yet. So that does concern us when you can't win the big one or the one that really can put you over the top to make you an elite team. So saying that, I think that makes you, average. That, you're almost sitting on a 500 deal right now with a very talented team, some high-profile guys, and we just got to do a little bit better.
Hey, I'm Tara Lanazek here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Colts have been bitten by the injury bug once again. Last week, it was Marlon Mack who went down, T.Y. Hilton has been banged up all year, and now the Colts have lost their starting tight end for the rest of the season. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport with the news Monday morning. Eric Ebron will have surgery on both his ankles and will be placed on season-ending IR. It's another tough blow for the Colts, whose season appears to be slipping away. Indy has lost 3 of its last 4 and have fallen out of a playoff spot in the process. Ebron wasn't exactly lighting it up this year. The Pro Bowler hasn't been able to follow up his breakout 2018 season where he caught 13 touchdowns. This season, Ebron has only 31 receptions for 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Colts will now turn to their vet, Jack Doyle, as their primary tight end. The 29-year-old could have some appeal as a value play this week against Tennessee. He has consistently seen 4 to 5 targets over the last 5 weeks with touchdowns in 2 of his last 4 games.
Okay, DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler return for some pick-making around the NFL. Guys, we're focusing on the 3 Thanksgiving Day games. First up on Thursday, the Bears are at the Lions, 12:30 kickoff. DK Sportsbook has the Bears favored by 1. Jeff, who are you picking to win this game?
I mean, you're kidding me here. Like, the Lions might be starting some guy named David Blau. He's got a Cleveland Browns jersey on in his DraftKings picture. That just gives you an idea of how deep they're going to be digging in this game just to field the team. I mean, I just don't understand how this opened as a pick 'em. We've already seen the line move towards the Bears. I wouldn't be shocked if you ended up at like Bears -4 by the time we hit kickoff. Obviously, a lot is going to depend on the health of Jeff Driscoll. I really doubt that Matthew Stafford is going to come in after 3 days. I can't see that making a difference here. Look, Chicago, they have their flaws, but they still have a solid defense. They've gone, they played the Rams competitive. Mitch Trubisky wasn't that bad last week. His receivers still suck, but no, you got to take the Bears here until the line pops up to at least a realistic amount.
Reed, you with Jeff here? This is a no-brainer?
Yeah, Allen Robinson had a good game, so that all the Bears receivers don't suck. But, when you're starting to hope for Jeff Driscoll as your quarterback, I think it's a high time that you can see the fact that your team is not that good. And if you just look at the Detroit defense and the run game and really how these guys in Patricia want to fashion their run defense, it's attacking that quarterback and stopping the run. It's what the Patriots do. That's why they're so good at defense, is because they put these teams behind the chains in 3rd and long and 2nd and long. That's not what the Lions are doing. And if you look at Kenny Golladay, if you look at some of these other skill players, they're just having a tough time. Detroit's just been riddled with injuries. It's like what Jeff was saying. Chicago's had its fair share of reasons why they shouldn't be that good or they shouldn't be favored. But look, they beat a Giants team that a lot of people on this panel thought were going to win that game or at least cover, and they did cover. But Chicago still has a really good defense, and they have a decent run game. The run game isn't bad. Going up against a bad run defense will make them look good. So yeah, I'm with the Bears.
All right, Reed, right back to you. Who is your favorite DFS play for this game?
Yeah, I mean, David Montgomery is someone that I want to choose and want to have confidence in, but inconsistency, just producing, that could be a little bit because of his ankle injury. And so, in terms of getting a guy like David Montgomery in your lineup, it's not bad. The usage is still there. Detroit's a bad defense against the run, so I like him. If Jeff Driscoll can play, if reports come out for some reason he can't play, he offers some upside with his legs, but he's looking like he's not going to. So I'm going to stick with David Montgomery.
Jeff, a DFS play from Lions Bears, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with the other running back. I mean, Tariq Cohen, obviously 15 targets over his last 2 games. I apologize to Allen Robinson. I meant to say outside of Allen Robinson, the rest of the Bears receivers suck. And that has led to Tariq Cohen getting more targets here. I mean, they just don't really have another option outside of just sending Cohen out wide or out of the backfield for targets. He's a good receiver. And against Detroit, who's just terrible at guarding his running backs and just most facets of the game, I mean, he can definitely go off in this situation. He's only 5K. I think Montgomery could easily be the play here too, though. If the Bears do somehow get a bit of an early lead, he can end up with 20 carries. So I think both running backs are in play. I prefer Cohen a little bit. I think that PPR upside is just too tempting for me to resist.
On to the 4:30 game. We've got the Bills and Cowboys. Sportsbook has Dallas favored by 7, coming off that loss to New England. Who will cover in this ball game, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just going to be a sucker and take Dallas here. I mean, I really do feel like at 6.5, 7, whatever it is now, I think the public money is coming in on Buffalo because obviously everyone remembers the Cowboys blowing it. But this happens every year. It's like a story with the Cowboys. Jason Garrett, they lose games they shouldn't. They kind of play too conservative. And then there's a game, it usually happens around Thanksgiving, and Garrett gets all offensive and takes some risks, and the Cowboys win big, and then they kind of go into the playoffs, or they just miss the playoffs. Every year this happens, though, and I really feel like this is a game where the Cowboys are going to come out, they're going to be aggressive. They're in the dome. Dak and Amari Cooper splits are so much better in the dome. I think that's what people are going to overlook here, too. And Buffalo, they really have no quality wins. So I'm not sure how much respect we should be giving to Buffalo. I feel like Dallas is going to cover here and win pretty big.
Yeah, Cowboys haven't beat a team with a winning record yet, Reed. So does that maybe change your outlook of this one? Who covers?
Jeff is a #1 Jason Garrett hater on Twitter. Follow at the Fantasy Grind. He documents every single time go ahead, it's a wrong play call.
I'm super happy with Jason Garrett took that field goal late because I mean I was on the Cowboys +6. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the only reason why you would do that, right? Is if you have Dallas plus the points. I mean, why would you anyway? Talking about this game in Buffalo, look, we talked about it. Buffalo doesn't really have any quality wins. They don't score the ball. I mean, they don't score, and they just don't get in the red zone. And Josh Allen still looks like a quarterback that is a little rougher on the edges. He's fantastic with his legs, but if you have a guy like Jalen Smith on the defense who's just as athletic, maybe not as fast in terms of just straightaway speed, he can definitely stay with a guy like Josh Allen and Spy. If you look at the Cowboys, their splits are so much better at home. They just want to be in Jerry's world. Jerry's going to be at practice. Jerry's going to be at practice looking at Dak, Amari, Zeke, and all of these guys and making sure that Jason Garrett isn't the reason why they lose this game by less than 10 points. So I got Dallas as well.
Wow. All right. Jerry's going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
I would think so.
He's going to be coaching. Garrett's out. Jerry's in.
Ooh. All right. Reed, let's keep it going for you. Let's go. Favorite DFS play for this game?
Yeah, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is someone that I liked a little bit more this past week. And if you just look at Amari's splits, man, his splits at home are astronomical compared to what he's done on the road. And especially last week when Stephon Gilmore held him to 0 points, 0 everything except for a couple of targets. His splits at home, he's seen double-digit targets. He's seen touchdowns in almost every single game, multiple touchdown games. Look at him. Even if he gets a guy like Tre'Davious White, who's extremely good in coverage, he's only allowing a passer rating of 55 so far this season. Amari is still going to be a focal point. I think a lot of people are going to be off him because of those two things, his bad performance, and then on top of that, getting Tre'Davious White, potentially shadowing him. I'm not worried at all. Give me Amari.
Jeff, DFS play for Bills Cowboys?
Yeah, I feel like with the splits some of the Cowboys receivers and players have, I think most of the Cowboys offensive players are in play here. I like going to Zeke Elliott, though, here. I mean, at 7,400, he's just too cheap at 7,400. I mean, the Cowboys are almost the touchdown favorites here. Like, they're at home. I mean, he's coming off a pretty good game. He's finally started to look a little bit more nimble, too. Like, he's kind of finally getting in shape, maybe from missing training camp. And it's not like the Bills have that great a rush defense. I mean, Denver was kind of chewing them up they just couldn't move the ball because their quarterback was so bad. Dallas doesn't have that problem. I think at 7,400, you've got to take a piece of Zeke Elliott. I obviously like the price on Dak too, but I kind of like stacking this game. Then if you play Zeke, you can come back with Josh Allen on the other side. Hope that he ends up, rushing a lot in kind of a catch-up role himself. But for me, the one player from this game that I got to roster, it's Ezekiel Elliott.
I think if you look at Devin Singletary too, if Leighton Vander Esch can't go, and it's Sean Lee again, who's been a decent linebacker in his past, but he's getting older. If you look at just pass-catching running backs against Dallas, James White didn't do anything, but the conditions were terrible. But if you look at guys like Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, they've had productive games in the pass arena. So just look at Devin Singletary. He just came off 100 yards rushing. He is that focal point. Frank Gore's still there, but he's getting the most of the snaps there. So if you want to potentially stack those running backs, and maybe if you think that game is going to be out of hand like we do in Dallas' side, there's going to be a lot of Singletary out there as well.
I think if you're going to stack, for me, if you're stacking one game from Thanksgiving, it's this one. So I like coming back with both those players.
All right. You guys are doing a great job. The night game features Saints and Falcons. Atlanta has won this matchup 26-9 in Week 10, but DK Sportsbook still has New Orleans, a much better team. 6.5-point road favorite. Jeff, who is your pick to cover?
Yeah, again, I mean, how is New Orleans only favored by 6.5? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just building into or buying into all these narratives here, but I just don't see how New Orleans doesn't come out here and just smack Atlanta around. I mean, there's obviously they got embarrassed the last times they play. And really, if you look at the trends too, New Orleans has just been a better road team against the spread. I mean, this is kind of the spot you want to take New Orleans. And it feels like every time that they're on the road, people just think, oh, they're not in the Superdome, so we shouldn't bet. And then the line gets too small. But they're actually a better cover team against the spread outside of their home games. So I'm not afraid of Atlanta. You got Julio Jones banged up. I know Marshawn Lattimore might be banged up too, but Julio Jones, I mean, no Julio Jones. They're completely banged up at running back as well. Atlanta just lost to Tampa Bay. I mean, I don't know, man. I got to go with the Saints here. I just don't see how Atlanta can do this twice to a team that's as complete as New Orleans.
Yeah, Breed, it seems the Saints were kind of woken up by that Carolina comeback in that game in New Orleans. So do you feel that the Saints come out here, guns blazing, ready to go?
Yeah, well, the Saints haven't really been a good cover team. And because when you look at the Saints, are obviously good from top to bottom on both sides of the ball. And so when you get these big lines, the Saints don't necessarily cover. Their margin of victory all season has been around 4, and that's kind of what we saw with Carolina. Now, if you look at this game specifically, we look at, okay, Atlanta beat them, and totally something that we all weren't expecting with Atlanta's defense showing up. But Atlanta just lost to Tampa Bay. The last time that the Saints were, I think, road favorites was against Tampa Bay, and they ended up beating them by 17. So now when you have Sean Payton and these guys, especially against Atlanta team that beat him at home, there's no way that these guys don't win by double digits. So, yeah, I think the Saints cover.
All right, Reed, back to you. Your favorite DFS play for Atlanta, New Orleans.
Yeah, it's the same as last week. I'm going to start with the receivers and Julio Jones and Mike Thomas. I mean, we talked about it a ton with last week's slate, and it didn't necessarily happen for Julio Jones. But if you just look at this matchup and just the high-scoring nature of this game, Julio Jones and Mike Thomas is where I'm going to start a lot of my lineups and then try and save elsewhere. But Michael Thomas, I mean, he's setting more records than we like to think about here, and he's just a fantastic play, even at his price tag. So start with the receivers and then go elsewhere. And Russell Gage, too. Russell Gage had a fantastic game, and so if you want to go cheap and still attack the Atlanta receiving core, he's another one.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of tough because you want to stack all these obviously expensive New Orleans players, right? Because we know Kamara's going to get the ball. We know Thomas is going to get the ball, but you got to kind of pick and choose. So I'm just going to go with Drew Brees. I'm just going to cop out, I guess. I just feel like Brees has played so good. And again, is Atlanta really going to shut down Drew Brees 2 games in a row? They still don't have a pass rush. They still have a shoddy secondary. I really feel like if you're going at quarterback, I don't mind the Josh Allen play like I mentioned before and stacking that game. But Drew Brees, to me, I think you kind of probably want to just pay up for him in the spot and just take the 20, 25 points that you're almost certainly going to get here. Atlanta's secondary, again, outside of that one game, I mean, they just have not shut down anyone at all season. I mean, Michael Thomas, sure, he's going to get the volume, but Drew Brees is going to benefit too. So all the Saints big guys, you're going to want a piece of at least in this game. But Drew Brees, for me, is the one with the safest floor at quarterback and someone who again, you're not going to have to guess about in this game, at least in my opinion.
And if Atlanta's defense goes back to being terrible, it definitely puts Matt Ryan back on the map. When the Atlanta's defense was playing good, Matt Ryan wasn't necessarily a strong cash play. But if they're giving up a ton of points, which they should in this game, Matt Ryan, especially if that defense, what we think is going to be bad again, is not a bad play either.
All right, that's a good look ahead to Thursday. Do you guys text each other during these games every Sunday? You guys have great chemistry back and forth.
2.5 hours. It's a straight, text to text. That's it.
I don't have time to text anyone.
We call. We do old-fashioned. We call each other.
Dog bugging me 24/7, Brandon.
And your twins. How are your twins?
Jeff, it's Brendan. We'll work on that, okay? I know. We'll try it in 2020. Gents, thank you very much. Wrapping up on the hardwood.
New Year's resolution.
Thanks, Jeff. After the Pat Mayo experience breaks down Ravens-Rams.
Let's talk about DraftKings Showdown. For this contest, the most expensive player on this matchup is Lamar Jackson. If you use him as your captain, Sal, over $20,000, over 40% of your salary cap if you choose to use Lamar Jackson as your captain. But if you're not using Lamar Jackson as your captain, who are you using as your captain?
Yeah, so starting with the no Lamar's, if you use Lamar as your captain tonight, maybe it works, but you're going to be standing out in Boston outside of the DraftKings headquarters with a cup asking for more DraftKings dollars because you're going to have just nothing left overall. So Lamar Jackson, it's tough to want to fade the guy, but if I'm not using him, and I'm probably not going to be using him, I think there's two options that stand out for me. The one is probably Robert Woods. Again, there's question marks around him, but he has probably the best matchup overall out of all those receivers. And the second one would be Todd Gurley.
So if it wasn't Robert Woods, let's say he is inactive for this game, would it then be Josh Reynolds?
So, yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I didn't think too much about that. I think I still prefer Gurley for just more upside over it, but I think it becomes a much worse matchup for Reynolds against a guy like Jimmy Smith than just Robert Woods skill set wise. But there'd definitely be overall utility spot and more interest in the captain spot in Reynolds. But if you had no Woods tonight, I'd probably lean to get the most Todd Gurley in the captain spot. I have a lot of interest in Jared Goff's price point on DK. It's 8,400. It's just really hard. Lots of times you don't see quarterbacks in the captain spot, and then you factor in this matchup. It's just brutal. So he's more of a utility play.
I'm just thinking right now, if I use Lamar Jackson as my captain, I try to figure out the rest of my team, you might have to play both defenses and both kickers. But that could be you play naked Lamar Jackson, hope that he rushes for a bunch, and throws to I don't know, Ricard or Hayden Hurst or something like that. And those are the jabronis that get the touchdowns, not the main guys that everyone's using. Or it's just a bunch of stalls, Lamar Jackson rushing yards, and then Tucker and Zerloin field goals or defensive touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah, if you're going to use Lamar up there, then it kind of benefits you in some way because all those secondary wide receivers are dirt cheap. Like Willie Snead, the wide receiver 2 in the team, he's in the 3K range. And then everybody else, Seth Roberts, Miles Boykin, Hayden Hurst, like you said, some of those backup tight ends, they're all $2,000 or below. So if you were to get them to catch a touchdown or two of them catch a touchdown this week just by chance, then it's definitely going to work out for you. $13,600, the highest price you've seen. But you look at this slate, people are just overpriced everywhere. You have a $10,200 Mark Ingram is just the most ridiculous price in the slate, even more than Lamar's price point. Lamar's might be justifiable, if anything, based on the slate. Mark Andrews is all the way up to $9,200. You have an expensive Todd Gurley. So it's a slate that becomes difficult. Even Cooper Kupp in a tough matchup's almost $10K. I usually say, okay, these 12 plus K cornerbacks, if they're not captain viable, and you might have to just fade them overall. But the rushing upside, he's I think the only guy on the slate that I think can touch 25 points tonight based on the matchups. So yeah, he's definitely in play. And captain upside is really hard to get to. I probably don't get there and see what else we can do. But the slate overall is priced up. I don't think you have any players in the 6 or 7K range at all outside of Robert Woods at 7K flat.
I actually think both defenses should be in play for this matchup. I know that there might be a lot of points scored by the Ravens, but at the same time, if this offensive line breaks down, Aaron Donald can do some damage, and Lamar's going to be running so much that it does leave him susceptible to fumbling, to turnovers. If that's the case, you create short fields. A lot of people would try to correlate that with the opposing running back, but hey, maybe it's just both defenses are still solid enough that it just leads to field goals. That would be the way that I would try to correlate it if I was trying to build somewhat of a unique lineup to win a giant GPP.
All right, again, 11 games in the National Basketball Association on this Monday evening. Many thanks to Ryan Mogjosh of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life. Ben Heisler is here as well, fantasy insider for 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. Gents, thanks for sticking around. NBA price check is going something like this. The following players, are they priced right for tonight's NBA slate? I ask you now about Fred VanVleet. His price, it's all the way up to $8,000 tonight when he faces the Sixers. He has logged at least 38 DK points in each of his last 5. So, Ryan, are you paying that much for him?
Probably not. He is playing really well, Fred VanVleet is, but they play a Sixers team that's super long, super versatile. He's going to be guarded by Ben Simmons some possessions. Josh Richardson, I imagine they stick on him a lot. And with Lowry out, he's got the brunt of the load so far, but I just don't like the matchup against this Philly team, and I think there's a lot of other players that you would be better off playing at the point guard / shooting guard position.
All right, and just keeping injuries in mind, Serge Ibaka not in tonight. How about you, Ben? What do you feel about Fred VanVleet, $8,000?
Yeah, I'm not in on VanVleet tonight, but it's not to say that, the price point isn't earned based on his recent performance. He's had no less than 33 DK points in his last 6 games. His usage rate for the last 2 games has been above 30%. There's just too many other good guards and good matchups tonight. We talked about Trae Young a little bit earlier on in the show. The Hawks implied total, second highest on the slate. You have Donovan Mitchell, if you want to get a little bit creative, at 8,400 against Milwaukee. Spencer Dinwiddie versus Cleveland without Kyrie Irving is $400 less. So I think I'd rather play any of those combination of guards than VanVleet tonight, even though he's earned that price usage going way up.
We'll get to Donovan Mitchell. Let's shift now to Andre Drummond. His price just 2 weeks ago was over $10,000. Now he's down to $8,700 against the Magic. Jonathan Isaac will probably have a chance to try and guard him a little bit. So, Ben, is $8,700 that price right for you?
It is for me. I think $8,700 is a great point to be able to get back on the Andre Drummond bandwagon, especially if you're going to save at center and not play somebody like Karl Anthony Towns. Andre Drummond has had 1 game this year where he's had less than 10 rebounds, and that game was 9 rebounds. You also have Blake Griffin set to return. I think that's going to cause players to fade Drummond. Orlando's also dealing with some injuries in their front court. That number 3 ranking against opposing centers on DraftKings, I think, is going to scare some folks away. And it's weird to look at Andre Drummond with that type of a discount as a really good leverage play, but Joel Embiid is only $100 more. He's taking on Toronto, so it's a good way, I think, to go contrarian tonight if you're playing in tournaments with Andre Drummond, even at a price discount.
Ryan, I've kept in mind what you said earlier. You love some Karl Anthony Towns tonight. So with that in mind, is Andre Drummond okay at $8,700?
Yeah, he is okay. And I think he's good value at $8,700 because of the matchup. The Magic are 27th in offense. They can't do much of anything offensively this season so far. They're last in three-point percentage, last in field goal percentage, and that means the ball is going to be bouncing out of the rim for plenty of rebounds. I think Drummond has a good chance of getting 20-plus boards tonight because they can't shoot a lick, and Drummond will get every single board. Now Blake Griffin is playing, so that kind of sets it down a little bit. But that's why Drummond is $8,700 now, is because his play has not been up to par with how he started the season with Blake Griffin.
All right, Ben, let's go to you on Donovan Mitchell since you mentioned him. His price is up to $8,400. He was $500 cheaper 2 days ago. Mitchell taking on those red-hot Bucks. So I guess you're in on him.
Yeah, I think he's another interesting leverage play when most of us, I think, are going to want to go in a different direction, especially in cash. You're right. I did bring him up earlier amongst the different guards, and with regards to Fred VanVleet, who's only $400 more, is Donovan Mitchell. But Jimmy Butler, $700 less, coming off a bad performance. You know that he's going to want to be able to improve on his play in a far superior matchup. We talked about Spencer Dinwiddie as well, filling in for Kyrie Irving. Great value for his expected production. And the thing about Donovan Mitchell is that I kind of like playing him in those tougher matchups where they're going to need him and be reliant upon him, especially that usage rate. He's coming off a 37% usage rate game. In his previous outing, he's outperformed his salary in 6 of the last 7 games. So he's a tournament-only option for me. There's better cash game value, but Donovan Mitchell certainly has the ability to go off tonight.
Ryan, how do you feel about Mitchell at $8,400?
I get scared to play anybody against the Bucks, and especially Donovan Mitchell tonight. Their defense is so long, and it's very good. Now, the Bucks play fast, so he has that going for him, but I don't love the matchup compared to what you could get across the board, and Ben mentioned it. Jimmy Butler coming off a horrible performance is going to want to bounce back against Charlotte. And then Spencer Dinwiddie is the NBA Player of the Week last week, and he's on a heater too without Kyrie Irving in. So I would go elsewhere at the guard position and not go Donovan Mitchell against Milwaukee.
All right, last one. We got to be quick with a minute or so to go in the show. CJ McCollum, his price has been as low as $6,000 just 2 weeks ago, but tonight he's $8,300 against the Bulls. I mean, he is balling out, 20 actual points on the court in 8 of his last 10. So we'll go to Ben first. Is that a fair price for CJ McCollum?
I guess it's a fair price point considering what he's been able to do the last several weeks, but I do think he's overpriced tonight. It's a huge NBA slate. There's plenty of better value guards. I know he's going up against Zach LaVine, who's not known for his defensive prowess. So I also think he's been motivated by Jim Boylan after getting publicly called out on Friday. So there's plenty of other guys that I prefer over McCollum tonight.
All right, Ryan, 5 seconds. What do you say?
Yeah, don't love it. Blazers are inconsistent. I would not go CJ.
All right, fellas, thank you very much. We appreciate all of your time. Enjoy the football tonight, the football later in the week, and the basketball this evening. The Sweat is back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We'll get you for 60 more minutes. I'm Brendan. Thanks for joining us tonight.